This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we'll begin with the next topic that was remaining in your unit 2 of your syllabus, and that is diuretics. Can you all see the screen? Okay. So like it says, the screen says that diuretics are drugs which will increase the urine formation or will increase the urine output from the body. Okay. We recently saw about antihypertensive agents, and it is on purpose that I have taken antihypertensive agents before I took the diuretics. Okay. You will see a lot of prescriptions from the doctors where diuretics are always prescribed with antihypertensive agents. Now, antihypertensive or hypertension for that matter, you have already seen in the previous classes that it is nothing but an increased pressure of the blood to the walls of your blood vessels. And one of the factors related to blood pressure is the increased volume of blood or increased sodium intake or retention of water or a combination of all these things. Okay, there is sodium retention also, and like I told you and I keep on telling you always, when sodium will be retained, with it other ions and water also will get retained. So this is a combination of all the things that you see in hypertension. And many a times in hypertensive patients, you will see that their limbs, their face, limbs as in even hands also, not only legs, they show a type of swelling, a type of water retention. Edema is seen at the end of the limbs. Okay, so that is why antihypertensive agents, many of them are such that they will decrease the edema. They will not only decrease the pressure of the blood that is being exerted on the vascular walls, but they also will be removing this edema that is present in the limbs. Okay, so that means the sodium concentration in the blood is also being decreased. Now, if you want to decrease the sodium concentration, or if you want to decrease the water that has been retained by your body inside your body, you could combine the antihypertensive agents with diuretics. Okay, so when you use antihypertensive agents with diuretics, the diuretics will increase the rate of urine formation and the rate of urine excretion from the body. So obviously, if they are concerned with urine formation, they are definitely going to work on the kidneys. And kidney, it is they are present as a pair of organs which is responsible for cleansing of your body. Okay, it is like the drainage of your body. All the waste matter from the body, if it has to be thrown out in the form of liquid, is thrown out in the form of urine. Okay, so this is what this is the target where the diuretics are going to act. Okay. Now in the kidneys there is a single functional unit which is known famously as the nephron, and one kidney approximately contains about 2 millions of nephrons. And what are these nephrons? These nephrons are nothing but filters. Okay. Every day in the morning you filter tea or coffee. You all the residue remains up, and whatever is required you strain it off. Now the nephrons work in a similar pattern. Whatever is required will be retained in the body, and all the waste and all the waste matter will be thrown out of the body by the use of these nephrons. Okay, now this is one wrong use that is seen of diuretics. So this is one of the wrong use, that diuretics are used for as a weight loss agent. Now, in an obese patient, you will see at the same time that water retention is there. There is a lot of edema in an obese patient. So sometimes diuretics get abused, and this could lead to severe dehydration and severe potassium and sodium deficiency. So this is one of the wrong uses that diuretics is put into. Now, what exactly happens in the nephron is what we are going to see. This is how the nephron site looks. Okay. This is these are the tubules that are present. I wish there was a blackboard. I could have drawn the nephron for you. Any which way. So nephron looks like a the kidneys are kidney shaped. So you can say if you make a C of your hand, the nephrons look like the C of your hand, and in this C part of the hand, a lot of tubules are entangled and they are placed. Okay, now the blood is passing through these tubules. Like the heart supplies blood to different parts of the body, the heart supplies blood to the kidneys as well. Now normally whatever blood will get supplied to the kidneys, this blood itself will pass through these nephrons, and when the blood passes through the nephrons, all the waste products, all the waste ions, all the excessive matter, every what is produced is what is called as the glomerular filtrate. Okay, so the word comes from this glomerulus. You can see on the slide. Okay, the word comes from the glomerulus, and in the end, what is formed is called as the glomerular filtrate. So we have around 5 liters of blood in our body. So in the entire day, the entire 5 liters of the blood will pass through the nephrons, and from this 5 liters of blood, about 75 to 150 liters of glomerular filtrate is formed. Okay, but not all of that gets excreted in the form of urine, does it? No. So only say about 8 to 10% gets formed as urine. The remaining 80 to 90% comes back, or rather 90 to 99% in fact comes back, and that coming back is called as reabsorption. Okay, so this filtering process and this reabsorption is taking place in the nephron site that you can see on the screen. Okay, now your blood is composed of several different things. There are a lot of waste products that will get generated in your blood. There will be ions like sodium, potassium, magnesium chloride, bicarbonate, hydrogen ions, and all inside which has been whatever is required will be reabsorbed in the body, and only the urine is then passing out. It is coming out from the collecting tubule, and in the end it will get collected in the urinary bladder. Okay, so if you see this diagram which is on your screen, you see there are 4 different parts in this: the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, the distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting tubule. Okay, so these are the 4 parts in the nephron through which your blood in the body is passing, and in the end urine is forming. So this is site 1, that is the proximal tubule or proximal convoluted tubule it is called as. This is the loop of Henle because it looks like a loop. Then is the distal convoluted tubule, and finally is the collecting tubule. So at each of these sites, there is different type of absorption happening. the quantity of reabsorption happening or the percentage of reabsorption happening is different, and that is why you will see all your diuretic agents for each site there are different diuretic agents. Okay, so based on what happens at these particular sites, what is getting reabsorbed, depending on that the diuretic drugs have been designed. So take down before we see each site into detail. Diuretics are chemical agents which promote, the attendance is very less today. Diuretics are chemical agents which promote or increase the excretion of urine. Promote or increase the excretion of urine by the kidneys. They cause removal of excess water. They cause removal of excess water and salt thereby helping in decreasing the body fluids, especially the extracellular fluid. Therefore, diuretics are used. In the management of hypertension and edema. In the management of hypertension and edema. Leave a line, next line. The functional unit of kidney is the nephron. The functional unit of kidney is nephron. Where urine is formed. This nephron is further divided in two parts, the glomerulus and the tubule is further divided in two parts, the glomerulus and the tubule. The glomerulus is cup-shaped. The glomerulus is cup-shaped. In which the blood gets filtered. through the Bowman's capsule. Through the Bowman's capsule. BOWMAN apostrophe S. Through the Bowman's capsule. And a glomerular filtrate is formed. And a glomerular filtrate is formed. Next line. Per day, around 75 to 150 liters. Per day, around 75 to 150 liters of filtrate is formed. And almost 98% of this filtrate is reabsorbed. And almost 98% of this filtrate is reabsorbed. The remaining 1 to 2% is excreted out. The remaining 1 to 2% is excreted out as urine. So if you see, in this glomerulus, the glomerular filtrate has been formed, and now that filtrate has to pass through this tubule. So there is a nephron, and there are two parts in the nephron. One is the glomerulus, the other part is the tubules. And when blood passes through the glomerulus, it gets filtered, it gets cleaned, and a filtrate is generated. And then this filtrate that is formed is then passing through these tubules. In the end, all the important matters are reabsorbed, the important ions and other important constituents which were going out in the blood are reabsorbed, but the waste products will remain in the filtrate and eventually will get excreted out in the form of urine. Okay, so like you can see in this figure, there is 65% absorption, that is reabsorption, that will happen at the proximal convoluted tubule. In fact, it is almost 80%, 65 to 80%. Then the next maximum absorption happens at the loop of Henle. A little amount of reabsorption also happens at the distal convoluted tubule, and very less amount of reabsorption happens at the convoluted tubule. So these are the 4 sites of reabsorption in the nephron. 4 major sites of reabsorption. So this is how it looks. The proximal convoluted tubule, the distal convoluted tubule. Now in that loop of Henle also there is a descending loop of Henle, and then there is ascending loop of Henle. And then there is the distal convoluted tubule, the collecting tubule, and then this is connected to the urinary bladder, where the urine formed urine will get stored. So we shall be seeing each of these sites in detail. We shall come on to the first site. Okay, and the first site is the proximal convoluted tubule, the almost straight part which is present, and it is called as the proximal convoluted tubule, site number 1, where the maximum amount of reabsorption is going to happen. Okay, so take down. The nephron has four major sites for reabsorption. Has four major sites for reabsorption. Now please remember, it will always be called as sodium reabsorption. The reason I told you already is when sodium will move in, a lot of other ions and water will move in. So your target during the process of reabsorption, if you want to have a good diuretic agent, should be that you should be able to reabsorb, you should not be able to reabsorb sodium. Okay, if you are having a drug which is reabsorbing sodium a lot, that means it is having an anti-diuretic action, because when sodium will be reabsorbed, water also will come in, then the urine output will decrease. On the other hand, if sodium reabsorption is hindered, it is stopped or it is decreased, in that case the sodium also will not come back. With that, water and other ions also will not come back, and you will have a diuretic action. Okay, so the first site is the proximal convoluted tubule. Second is the loop of Henle. Now, even in the loop of Henle, the maximum absorption happens at the ascending limb. This is the ascending. Ascending means climbing. So this is the descending loop of Henle. This is the ascending loop of Henle. So the major amount of reabsorption happens at the ascending loop of Henle. Then the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting tubule. Last is the collecting tubule. Okay, so like I said, we are going to see each and every site in detail, and we first come to the proximal convoluted tubule, which is made up of epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells have the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Now, what is the requirement of this sodium potassium ATPase pump? In normal condition, when you are not looking in for a diuretic or an anti-diuretic action, when normal urine formation is happening, and this proximal convoluted tubule, sodium is coming in. Now, like I told you, there is always an exchange of ions from intracellular fluid to extracellular fluid and vice versa. So if you are having reabsorption of sodium, you are taking back sodium, you have to give back something in return. So what is given back in return instead of sodium when you are taking in? When sodium moves in, hydrogen ions will move out. Now, where will these hydrogen ions come from? These hydrogen ions will come from the sodium potassium ATPase pump, and there is another important enzyme that is present at this site, that is at the proximal convoluted tubule, and that enzyme is called as the carbonic anhydrase enzyme. Okay, so this carbonic anhydrase enzyme and the sodium potassium ATPase pump together will generate H plus ion and will make a pathway for the exchange of sodium and potassium, sodium and hydrogen ions. Okay, so the carbonic anhydrase enzyme will generate H plus, and through the sodium potassium ATPase pump, the H plus will move out and the sodium ion will be reabsorbed into the from the luminal fluid. And when H plus ion moves out, it will go into the luminal fluid, and in the luminal fluid, this H plus ion, there will be bicarbonate ion in the luminal fluid or in the or in the filtrate. So when this H plus ion goes outside into the filtrate, it will react with that bicarbonate ion and it will decompose to form carbon dioxide and water. Okay. So this is the first part of the proximal convoluted tubule where it is able to reabsorb the sodium. Now, I said that around 65 to 80% of the reabsorption is taking place over here. So obviously your body is not looking only for sodium ions, that only sodium ions are important. I should only reabsorb sodium ions. Your body is looking for some other things also. So this glomerular filtrate is rich with glucose, is rich with amino acids, is rich with phosphates, and along with sodium, this glucose, this amino acid, these phosphates, which are present in the luminal fluid in the glomerular filtrate, they also will be co-transported. Please note, I am using the word co-transported. They are not absorbed. They are moving in with sodium. If sodium was not there, if carbonic anhydrase enzyme is not there, then this co-transportation is not happening. I always remember sodium never travels alone. It takes with it an entire battalion with itself. Like here it is taking glucose, it is taking amino acids. Similarly, it takes water, it takes potassium. Okay, so this is the speciality of sodium. And the third reabsorption that happens at the proximal convoluted tubule is, like I told you, with sodium, chloride also will get reabsorbed. Okay, so only at this one site of the proximal convoluted tubule, there are three different things that are going to get absorbed. Number one is sodium. Number two is the amino acids, glucose and phosphates. Number three are the chloride ions. And this all is possible only and only when the carbonic anhydrase enzyme, which is present in the proximal convoluted tubule, is active. It is able to generate the H plus ion, and this H plus ion is able to get exchanged with the sodium ion, and when sodium ion will move in from the luminal fluid to the antiluminal part, the hydrogen in return will go and join the luminal fluid. When sodium enters, it is with it is entering amino acids, glucose, phosphates, and chloride ions. And what happens to this hydrogen when it joins the luminal fluid? This hydrogen will then react with the bicarbonate in the luminal fluid to form carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so what we have seen now is only about the proximal convoluted tubule. Only that 65 to 80%. What reabsorption is your body going to do? These are the reabsorption items that are going to come back to your body at the proximal convoluted tubule. Have you understood this part? Only then I shall move ahead to the loop of Henle. You need to put it in the chat box. You're fine. Yes, now can you hear me? Yeah. So take down about site 1. The maximum reabsorption from the luminal fluid takes place at the proximal convoluted tubule site. At the proximal convoluted tubule site. The proximal convoluted tubule is made up of epithelial cells. The proximal convoluted tubule is made up of epithelial cells and along with it has the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Has the sodium potassium ATPase pump. The reabsorption of sodium at site 1 involves the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Involves the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Which is present in the cytoplasm of the cells. Which is present in the cytoplasm of the cells. This carbonic anhydrase produces H plus ions. Produces H plus ions, which is exchanged for the sodium ions, which is exchanged for the sodium ions from the luminal fluid. From the luminal fluid. So when sodium moves in, hydrogen will move out to join in the luminal fluid. This hydrogen, on reaching the luminal fluid, reacts with H3O minus, that is bicarbonate, reacts with H3O minus ion to generate carbonic acid, which then decomposes to CO2 and H2O, which then decomposes to CO2 and H2O. Next line. The second mechanism by which sodium is reabsorbed is through co-transportation, with glucose, amino acids, and phosphates. 100% of the glucose and amino acids is reabsorbed of the glucose and amino acids gets reabsorbed along with sodium. The third mechanism of sodium reabsorption is with chloride ions. When chloride ions are reabsorbed, sodium ions follow. Thus, With the help of these three mechanisms, around 65 to 80%, around 65 to 80%, what was the last thing you wrote? What was the last thing you wrote? 65 to 80% of the sodium. 65 to 80% of the sodium is reabsorbed. From here, the luminal fluid moves to the loop of Henle. Moves to the loop of Henle. Side 2. Leave a line and write side 2. Okay. Now, झालं. Can you hear me? Okay, there is a lot of network issue today because of rains. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay, this will keep happening otherwise again and again. I'll schedule a class again tomorrow. We'll continue with diuretics tomorrow. Okay, I'll end the class.